Welcome and thank you for joining me today. Babble with Babita on Break and Links, a digital growing program. In today's program, we have this remarkable individual who has served the United States for the past 34 years as a career diplomat and continues to work on various intellectual and social activities. He has served as the former US ambassador to Nepal as well as Eritrea and Uganda. He was the Deputy Chief of Mission of the American Embassy in Botswana, as well as a Foreign Service Officer in India, Madagascar, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming former US Ambassador to Nepal, His Excellency Scott H. Delisi, to Break and Links.
Namaste, Babita.
Namaste, Your Excellency.
What a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you, and welcome to Break and Links.
Thank you. And Babble with Babita. I love the title. I love that name. It's wonderful.
It was too many B's. Babble, Babita, Break.
No. It's all very good. I like it all.
Ambassador, my first question. What is that middle initial you have in your name, H?
Yeah, now I've never been asked that question in an interview before, and
really?
I'm happy to answer it. But I was trying to think very quickly. What could I tell you? What would be a wonderful middle name for someone to have? But I can't come up with anything other than the truth. It stands for Henry, which was the middle name of my mother's father. He was Elmer Henry Minia, and so when I was named, they chose Henry to remember my grandfather who had passed away before I was born.
To me, I address you as remarkable because of the work you've done through be it the Survey Foundation or Engage Nepal. You have bridged so much helping Nepal, and it can be nothing but love for Nepal and its people.
That's true. It is. Nepal proved to be a very special posting for my wife and I. And although there are many places in the world where we can engage, where we can make a difference, I've been fortunate enough that having served as ambassador to Nepal, I could perhaps more directly have an impact there than in some other places that are facing challenges in today's world. And to do that in Nepal, in a country that we did fall in love with. And I've said this many times before, because people always say, why? Why Nepal? Mm-hmm. Why do you care so much? And it's a beautiful country, and you know that as a Nepali. You've seen the gorgeous, natural beauty that the country has to offer, and that's a feast for our eyes. But the people of Nepal, having lived and worked in many countries around the world over the span of 3.5 decades, I don't know that there was any place where we found people who were as gracious, as generous in spirit, as compassionate, as caring as the people in Nepal. And I can still remember, Babita, as a young officer, when I first went to Nepal many years ago. I was the desk officer for Nepal back then. And I remember we would go to a village, and you'd go in and you'd meet people and you'd talk to them. And then they'd say, "Oh, sir, you must stay for Dalbat." Even though you know that they had so little, but absolutely they had to share this with you, that this was part of their experience. And it touched us so deeply. And I think that for both my wife and I, that experience, not only of the beauty and the culture and the spirituality of Nepal, but the people just touched us so deeply that the chance to give back, to remain engaged, and to make a difference in whatever small way we can, that's important. And so I'm delighted to have that chance to continue to have Nepal be part of my life.
That's a nice story, and it's engraved in your heart.
Very much so, very much so.
And I'm sure you do so much work which is not in the media or social media, but extensively you've helped Nepal so much.
We've done a lot. I like to think of this, though, as not so much of us helping Nepal, but as us working in partnership with people who are determined to build a better future for themselves. We know life is hard in Nepal, and we know the poverty that people face, and we know the challenges of leadership that they've faced as well at times. But when a community says, we want to make a difference, we want to make a difference for our children, for the future, we want to be able to face the future with hope and with confidence. And when they're trying, and if we can offer a helping hand extended in partnership, together we can do something that's truly powerful. And we don't have the resources to go in and say, oh, we're going to fix everything. Of course not. But we do have enough, at least when we have donors and others who are working with us who care as well, to be able to help those communities make a difference. And this is what I'm particularly proud of, that over the past few years we have really built ongoing relationships with communities who are driving change, who are building better futures for their children, who are giving them, ensuring that there's health care and that there are opportunities for education and the kids have a chance to learn and to grow and to be healthy. And to be able to be part of that again, that's what matters. And I'm proud that over the past 5 years, or almost 6 years, I guess now, that I've been engaged Nepal, we've been able to put over $500,000 of assistance into Nepal over that time. But it's not the amount of money that you give. It's the impact that it has on people's lives. It's about engaging the world. And that's why when we looked at our name and we said, Engage Nepal, that's who we are. That's what we do.
So we'll talk further in detail about Engage Nepal and its work. But I would like to ask you, how was your experience during your time as the U.S. ambassador to Nepal?
It was fantastic. It was one of my favorite postings on so many levels. Yes, there were challenges as the nation was evolving and was changing and trying to figure out what it meant to be a federal democratic republic and to shape a new constitution. And there were ups and downs with all of that. But the work of an ambassador is more than just dealing with the political side of things. It was also about meeting the people. It was about sharing with them our own story as Americans, our values and our beliefs, and our hopes for the type of world that we wanted to build in partnership with the people of Nepal. And the chance to travel across Nepal and to share that experience. And this is where, as an ambassador, I used Facebook a lot. I was one of the first U.S. ambassadors to start using Facebook as a tool for engagement. And it was fascinating to use Facebook and to share photos and to comment on the experience we've had when we were visiting, say if we were in Pokhara, or if we were up in Solukhumbu, or wherever it might be. And to realize that for a young Nepali, maybe out in the far west, they were seeing this, and they were seeing Nepal through our eyes, but it led to these great discussions and this richness of engagement that I still treasure. And I'll just say, I had a note the other day from a young man who had followed me on Facebook when I was ambassador, and he was in high school at the time. And we're still in touch today, and he's now in America. But to realize that you build these connections that endure and that we continue to be part of each other's lives, that's what the world today is all about. It's about these connections that we build. And I think in Nepal we had the chance to build some very powerful and meaningful connections. And I'm so grateful for the experience. It was a wonderful, wonderful posting.
Are there any like a story that you would like to share that you've not talked about?
That I've not talked about. I've talked about so many different stories through the years, but I guess it was that power of connecting with young people in particular. Because in a nation like Nepal, where the majority of the people were under the age of 40, right? There was a youthful population. yet their voices were often not heard. And when we took the time to sit with young people and to engage with them and to talk to them about their aspirations, their frustrations, and to share our views without being prescriptive, but opening up and sharing a perspective, it was a tremendously powerful form of engagement. And we created, while I was there, we created a youth council for the embassy. And I had the chance, so we worked with these young people, and they were from all over the country, right? We believed that a young Nepali, as they were struggling to figure out what it meant to be a Nepali in today's world, what it meant to be a Nepali in this new federal democratic republic. You know, people used to be, they were subjects of a king who was also a deity and all the rest. But now they were trying to figure out how they fit into the world. And we were willing to bet that a young person from Solukhumbu, or a young person from Biratnagar, from kids from all over the country, and whether they were Hindu, whether they were Buddhist, whether they were Christian, whether they were Rai, whether they were Mugger, whatever, whoever they were, wherever they were from, that they could come together and that they might find more in common as young people seeking to build a future than these traditional identifiers that kind of set people apart in these distinct communities. And we did that, and we brought them together. And so we built these connections, and we also gave them opportunities. We would fund projects and say, you've got to figure this out, though. Figure out how to lead and design a project and what to prioritize, because this is what you're going to have to do as you grow. And when I was back in Nepal a couple of years ago at a program that we were sponsoring about accessible tourism up in Pokhara, it was being simultaneously translated. And who was leading this? But a young man who had been part of our youth advisory group, who was very low vision, practically blind. But he had his own company. They were doing great work, and he led this translation process. And he came up to me and said, Ambassador, do you remember me? I said, of course I remember you. And he said, look at what I'm doing today. You took a chance on me. The American embassy, the American people, you believed that we could do these things, that young people could build a future for themselves, that we could transform the world. And he said, and I've been able to do this.
That's nice. And also I feel like sometimes it's challenging for the younger generation when you have these older people controlling the...
I suggested often to these young people that it had to be very frustrating when they were being told, we don't want to hear from you. Remain silent. You don't get to speak till you look like the ambassador. Have gray hair or be bald. And that's not the way it should be. But I knew there was a problem, Babita. When I arrived in Nepal, and I still can remember meeting the head of the youth wing of the Nepali Congress Party, and I say this with great respect for my colleagues from the Nepali Congress Party, but the head of the youth wing was, I think at the time, 65 years old. And I said, there's something wrong with this picture. And there was. Young people's voices needed to be heard, and they were not being heard. And I think that's still a challenge. And we would debate, and I'd have young people would come to me, they'd say, oh, Ambassador, we've got a problem with corruption in our country. And please fix this problem of corruption. And I'd have to say to them, this is your country. I can't fix these problems. You have to fix these problems. And as young people, you're over half the population. In the elections, your voice will matter, but you have to find a way to ensure that your voice is heard. You have to be willing to raise your voice. And this went sometimes against a tradition of what is the role of these young people. But this is one of the things that I think probably needed some tweaking, shall we say.
Because it's a very cultural thing for...
It is, very much so.
You can be 40 and still treated like a child and not able to voice your concern.
But the world is changing, and we have to change with it.
That's true. It takes time.
It does.
Teething
it does.
One step at a time. About you, a young, handsome youngster coming from the Midwest, Minnesota, you stumbled into the Foreign Service, of course, for a job, and not sure at that time what you were about to do. Did you ever think you would dedicate a portion of your life to help others within your capacity?
Not at that time, no. You're absolutely right. I came into the Foreign Service in a very serendipitous way. It wasn't a lifelong plan, but it happened. And I found myself in the Foreign Service, and I thought, oh my gosh, what have I gotten into? But you very quickly learned that the operative word was service. It was about service. It was about service to our nation. But and that became very important to me, that sense of serving our country. But you also realized it was more than just that. It was service to a set of values that our nation stood for, values that we believed were important in the world, and that we were there to both articulate and to demonstrate through our own actions and through our commitment. And that sense of engaging the world, of striving to make a difference, that was very powerful. And it surprised me, but it came to define me. And it defines me still today.
And it's helpless, but a powerful feeling, I think, yet priceless when the word service, when you put it into it.
Absolutely. And again, it is all about recognizing that we get to make choices all the time in our lives, and we get to choose how we're going to engage the world and whether we will give some of ourselves in service to others. And to me, that's how we grow. And I was fortunate enough to have found myself in a profession where that door opened for me.
And you made a difference.
I like to think so. And I
I'm sure.
And I like to think we're still making a difference in the work that we do.
Yes. Now on a different note.
Sure.
Nepal being in the midst of two powerful countries, India and China, how do you find the presence of Nepal's role?
When I was in Nepal, I had so many people who would say to me, almost lamenting, "Oh, Ambassador, poor Nepal, we are the yam between two boulders." Okay, Gartney, what to do? Yeah, what can we possibly do? If we allow ourselves as a nation, as people, to be defined by those external forces rather than being defined by who we are and what we believe and what we can do, we've got a problem. And yes, I certainly recognize. I'm not naive enough to suggest that Nepalis can just ignore, either of their neighbors. But I would suggest that we can allow ourselves a little more freedom in deciding how we will make our choices rather than constantly lamenting that we have no choice, that we're always being buffeted by these other powers. Yeah, we do have choices and we need to make them.
We do, but sometimes I think we are locked down because being a landlocked country, we depend.
You do, absolutely, and that becomes part of it as well. But I think it also can become an excuse to not really tackle some of the problems, thinking through what it means to you as a nation. And I think that there are those who look at those two powers and rather than seeing neighboring nations with whom you have to engage, see power centers that they can use to try to advance their own political interests. And I think sometimes people are more worried about how can we use the presence of our neighbors, either one, to advance our own political agenda, rather than they are with looking at what works best for Nepal in the long run.
Yeah, the people of Nepal are trying their best, what works best for Nepal. And once an ambassador or a diplomat, you will always be followed and asked certain questions about the political And as a former ambassador to Nepal again, and with your expertise, what have you done what should have been done to achieve more results to help further develop Nepal?
There should have been more focus on those issues of development. While I was there were great debates that were ongoing in Nepal, of course. What is the future going to look like? What is our constitution going to look like? All of these things had to be addressed. And those were big issues, and I know this. But I also found again and again that oftentimes the political parties were more concerned about the competition for power than they were with articulating a truly viable agenda for development or for engagement. And that was perhaps one of the greatest sources of frustration. You may know that while I was in Nepal, for example, one of the things that we were very focused on, we did a lot of work in development, a lot of work in health, a lot of work in agriculture and other areas. But we also were very focused on disaster risk reduction and preparedness. We knew earthquakes would hit again, and they will come yet again. And the time to act is now, to prepare for that next disaster, not to wait till everyone's injured or dead in an earthquake. We act now. So we did a lot of work on that front. What struck me, we built great partnerships. But as you talk to the political leaders, asking them to please talk to people, raise these issues, they never would, because it didn't serve to get them into power. If we would talk to them about agricultural policy, they weren't interested in talking about agricultural policy. They were, again, interested in what will win our party the majority of the seats, so that so-and-so can be prime minister, et cetera, et cetera. Nepal's not alone in that. But to me, this was an obstacle for development when leaders were more consumed with the pursuit of power rather than thinking about, if I get into power, this is what we can do to transform our nation. That was the part of the conversation that was often lacking. I don't know if that's changed. I don't know that my experience was universal. Perhaps others saw it differently. But that was the impression that I often had. And it was a source of some frustration to me.
So it was hard to implement good for the country because of some political figures.
We are happy to work in partnership to build a better future and to look at development issues that matter. But if you don't, but we're an outside actor. It has to be driven by the leadership of Nepal. And so when the leadership isn't as focused on these issues as we might be or as other development partners might be, it becomes hard. If we care more about the development issue, if we care more about agriculture, if we care more about health than the leaders of the country do, there's something wrong with the picture.
That is true, yes. I don't know if you're keeping up with the current affairs in Nepal. Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about the MCC, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, which is a grant program as a continuation of the strong partnership between the United States and Nepal, and to reduce poverty through its economic growth, given that we've also had the earthquake, which was a big mm-hmm. disaster, and now the pandemic.
Right.
And MCC has been like a subject of debate, or one would say a hot topic in Nepal. As a former US ambassador, what are your views on this?
You know, I know it's been a subject of great debate, and this is the subject, again, the people of Nepal, the leaders in Nepal, have to make their choice about whether they believe that this is the best path for Nepal or not. And I'm not going to insert myself into that debate. I have no desire to get involved in politics these days. So I will only say, though, that I was very proud when I saw what the United States was prepared to do in terms of the MCC Compact. We wanted, and we want, to be a good partner. We want to help alleviate poverty. We want to help build a stronger future for Nepal. We have offered a program that I believe is a strong program and that makes sense. And I know that it's gotten caught up in a lot of politics and a lot of debate, and I leave it to that it's a choice for Nepalis to make. And ultimately, they will choose what they choose.
But if it's for the betterment of the country?
It's not for me to determine what is for the betterment of the country. It's for the people of Nepal to decide later whether their leaders made a wise choice or not. I can't speak to it more than that, I guess. There's a lot of different views, and I trust my colleague, Ambassador Barry, who is in Nepal now, and our leaders in Washington, and in their conversations with their counterparts in Nepal. That's a conversation for government to government, and I don't want to further complicate discussions by saying things that when I'm not involved in the process.
Thank you for answering it so diplomatically. Why does Nepal matter to the US, and what are its interests in the country, if any?
Every country matters to the United States. I could say every country has a vote in the United Nations, they're all counted equally, and that's true. But we don't engage. We don't engage to say, oh, what can we get out of Nepal? Or what can Nepal give us? Or what is our strategic interest here? Americans have traditionally been pretty straightforward folks. Nepal isn't going to make or break the future of the United States, and it's not going to be the determinant of U.S. foreign policy going forward. But does that mean we don't care? Absolutely not. We care about the people of the nation. We care about building partnerships. We want a global community in which all nations are strong and they're prosperous, and where people's rights are respected, and where we address global problems together as part of a global community. And countries can't do that if they're mired in poverty. They can't do that if people aren't receiving good educations, if they aren't receiving health care. We want to create a world. We want to create the kind of world that we want our grandkids to grow up into. And that means that we engage everybody. And we try to find a path to partnership that is mutually respectful, and where we listen to each other, and we try to find things that work for all of us. And because we are a big nation, and because we are a nation that has enjoyed many blessings, we are able at times to offer our hand in partnership, as we are in the MCC Compact, for example. And that's what we want. We want countries to be successful. We want Nepal to be successful. We want it to be prosperous and democratic, and we want people to live lives that are meaningful and where they are part of their nation's future. That's what we look for.
And so this debate is like, where do we go? How do we take it?
Yeah, in every country, finding a way to reach this level of partnership and engagement in these global issues and all the rest, it's different in every country because every country's circumstances are different. Every country views the U.S. differently. And so it's always a question of, it's about engagement. It's about engaging the world. That's become the theme of my life. It's about choosing how we're going to engage with a partner and how we build that future.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to any big change, it's like a big revolution or big change, it's always hard to accept, even though it's for positive or whatever constructive reasons.
Sure.
It takes time here. Some observers comment that the US sees Nepal through the eyes of India and does not have any independent Nepal policy on crucial issues. What is your observation on this subject?
Well, I would just say that we, for example, probably would not be offering, a significant MCC package such as we did if we didn't think about Nepal independently. But more to the point, when I was an ambassador, when I went out as an ambassador, people said the same thing to me. And I told them quite simply that that was nonsense. We did not see Nepal through India's eyes. We saw Nepal through our own eyes. We saw Nepal as a sovereign nation with whom we sought to build a partnership that mattered. People, again, have sometimes overestimate the role that these geopolitical configurations play in how we approach some of these things. Certainly no one's, where you're always aware that there's a bigger world, that we all fit within this bigger global dynamic. But as an ambassador to Nepal, I was concerned about Nepal. I didn't care what India thought or what China thought. I cared about our partnership with Nepal. When we worked at disaster risk reduction, we weren't worried about what is India going to say or what is China going to say. We worried about saving lives in Nepal. When we worked with farmers, in the Terai, to try to help them develop new crops, higher crops that would generate greater incomes for their families. When we helped them to reach a point where a family could suddenly say, you know what, with this approach, I don't have to go to India and work for 6 months or 9 months in the year. I can stay here and work the land with my wife and with my children, and we can build a future here. We were thinking about Nepal and only about Nepal. I don't know why people found it so hard sometimes to believe that we really did care about the partnership with Nepal, independent of India and China.
I think being a small country and with not that much natural resource or the resources that the other countries are fortunate to have. Mm-hmm. So Nepal does have some limitations or substantial Sure. limitations. So that's why we say that we are seen through the lenses of India versus having our own set of opportunities.
I think there are a lot of reasons people may see it that way. And I can't change how they see it. But I can speak to the way that I saw it and the way that my government saw it, at least when I was ambassador. I absolutely believe it's still true today, but I'm not in the government, so I won't speak for them. But I do know that during my time there, we cared about Nepal. We acted based on what we thought was important in terms of our relationship with Nepal and with the people of Nepal. And it wasn't about India. It wasn't about China. It was about Nepal.
Okay. The other topic, that is the Free Tibet movement, is one of the issues in Nepal. It is said that American interest on Tibetan issues sometimes pushes Nepal into a challenging situation, especially its relationship with the northern neighbor, China. What are your views on that?
I would take exception to the question in a way, I guess, Babita, not personally. But it's not about the Free Tibet movement. When I was there, I don't think I ever discussed the Free Tibet movement with Nepal. That's a China issue. That's a different set of concerns. What I did discuss with the people of Nepal, with the leadership of Nepal, were basic rights and protections for refugees. There were Tibetan refugees who came through Nepal, many of them en route to India to join the Dalai Lama. And there were others, Tibetan refugees, who were long-standing communities within Nepal. Not seeking to engage in a debate about China or Tibet or anything else, but the protections for refugee communities, some of the most vulnerable communities that any country encounters when we have refugees who come across our borders. And we have an obligation as part of the international community to do what we can to protect the human rights of these refugees, to see to their welfare, to treat them with respect and dignity. And this was always the concern, that people not be ignored, not be forgotten, not being put into more vulnerable situations. And we asked Nepal to allow them to transit, to allow them to go to India, to ensure that they were protected in the interim, and that those who had settled in Nepal, many of whom had been in Nepal for years and years and years, be allowed that opportunity for education, for employment, for being part of the country in which they were now and had been resident for many years. Those were the issues that we talked about. It wasn't a free Tibet issue. It was a fundamental human rights issue of refugee protection. That I will stand up for any day of the week. And in this case, we were talking about Tibetans. We did the same thing for Bhutanese refugees who were in the camps in southern Nepal, and we brought many of them to the United States. And we cared as much about them and we care about any refugee population. And that's because that's part of who we are. And that's fundamental to our DNA as Americans, to care about vulnerable communities, those who are at risk, because if we don't speak for them, who will? So this was our job.
And I think the government of Nepal did an immense amount of contribution towards this.
And they did. And I'm not insensitive to the fact that your northern neighbor at times saw that community differently. And I know that there were political sensitivities. Of course there were. We didn't try to debate the politics of this. We debated the humanity of this. And the government of Nepal did many good things and worked with us oftentimes to try to resolve issues of concern.
That is true. So, Your Excellency, you've been in the Foreign Service and a diplomat for many years, so you can answer everything so poised and so nicely. But now coming to a topic that I think is more near and dear to you, which is Engage Nepal. You can highlight us about this.
The work that I did as a diplomat was fantastic, but that was then. We all continue our life's journeys. You know, I've retired from the Foreign Service. I still do some consulting work for the State Department. But now one of the things that I've committed myself to is the work of Engage Nepal. And when I started with Engage Nepal about 6 years ago, I think we had about $500 in the bank. And the question was, how do we make a difference? What do we do? And we had started with the focus on responding to the natural disaster, the earthquakes that hit in 2015. And we asked ourselves, how can we help and how can we, again, prepare for a safer future? And that's been part of the work. But very quickly, as you start addressing these issues of vulnerable communities, people who are vulnerable to a natural disaster, you realize that asking people to prepare for the next disaster can be a challenge if they're worrying about, am I even going to be able to put food on the table tonight? Is my child, if they fall ill, will my child be able to get health care? Do I have a job? Do I have a livelihood that will allow me to care for my family? All of these things are legitimate and serious concerns too for communities. And while we know that we cannot address every problem and we can't fix everything, and we certainly don't have the money to do that sort of thing, we believe that we can touch lives and we can make a difference day in and day out. And that's what we've attempted to do. And as I said a moment ago, starting with $500 or so in the bank, over the past 5.5 years or whatever it's been, we've been able to contribute about $500,000 now to projects that have transformed lives, that are changing lives every day. And in the process, we've grown and we've found better ways, I hope, to do these partnerships. Our philosophy, though, is I don't need offices in Nepal. I don't need a bunch of SUVs running around the country, with our name on the side saying, here we come, we're going to tell you how to do everything. We've got partners on the ground, organizations, nonprofit organizations in Nepal, community organizations in Nepal, who know the needs of their communities, who know how to address them, who have the trust of their communities. And we're working in partnership with them. And they share our commitment to transparency and to accountability, which have been huge issues, I think, for many donors working in Nepal. How do you ensure that when you do these things, that you have the impact that you want, that the money is used properly? And this is one of the things that is paramount to us, that we are so deeply concerned about. And I've been thrilled because we have built really strong, ongoing relationships now with communities as well. Timi, the community of Timi. The mayor has become a great partner. We're working closely with the hospital there, and through working with the hospital there, we have been able to, we saved lives during the pandemic. We provided oxygen, we provided testing kits. They had a program, though. We worked with them because they had a program that was smart, that was thoughtful, that was really looking at the science of how do we address the pandemic. It was such an honor to work with them and to have this ongoing partnership. And now we're building a pediatric intensive care unit within the hospital there to help children who are in need. And every day when we do things like this, when we are able to provide the oxygen concentrators, when we're able to provide 60,000 masks, and they helped us to distribute them, and with partners, with the Gorkha Foundation. They went up to Gorkha, they went to Bhaktapur, they went to Kathmandu. We found ways to ensure that the work we did mattered. We work with a small community, the Shankarapur rural municipality. It's northeast of Kathmandu. And there we have built an ongoing program with the community. And again, with the mayor, with the local leaders, with parents. And we've created community learning centers to keep kids in school, or keep kids involved in education, even when schools were closed during the pandemic. So the girls weren't forced into early marriages or at risk of trafficking. So boys weren't pushed into early child labor. We have provided food support for people who have been desperate during the pandemic. We have worked with the Nepal Ambulance Service to provide emergency care and to build a cadre of skilled paramedics across the country who are going to be able to respond to the next disaster while they're saving lives today. Every time we turn around, there's more need, there's more that we can do. The list of our projects has grown, and I'm pleased, I'm proud of what we've been able to do. But when we can look and we can say we are changing lives, right now, with the pandemic, so many people lost their jobs, right? And the tourism industry was devastated. And it's going to be a while in recovering. And people who worked in that industry were saying, now what do we do? So we're doing livelihoods training. And we're doing it in partnership. We did a program in partnership with the Dhulikhel municipality, and working through T-Help, a Nepali organization led by one of the leaders was a dear friend, former Minister Yankala Sherpa. And we are providing the community training in everything from mushroom cultivation to beekeeping to dairy, showing them how to do organic agriculture, to give them new opportunities to earn money, and not just teaching them the skills, but then helping with marketing. And how will you actually bring these products to market, and how you can make a living doing this, because we've got to find alternatives. We've got to find new ways forward. And what's cool, Babita, is when we do projects like this, people see what we've done in Timi, and they say, oh, could we do that out west? We want to do that here too. People see what we did with Dhulikhel, and now we've got 6 other municipalities that have come to us and said, we'd like to do something similar in our area as well. We have helped one of our programs over the course of a year, we said every month, one child, one severely malnourished child, we were going to fund their participation in a program. These were infants. That's going to save their lives, and we did. We saved the lives of 12 kids that year, right? $400 a child every time. If we save a life, how powerful is that? If we closed our doors tomorrow and that was all we had done, you'd close your doors with pride because you saved 12 lives. It all matters. Could we save more? Of course we can. The more money we have, the more we can do. And this is always the fundamental challenge. We have no independent sources of income for Engage Nepal. So it is constantly asking people to open their hearts, to become part of this effort to make a difference, to be willing to engage, to serve. And we can do it in a lot of ways. Yeah, I've been struck by how hard that is, though. I had no idea how challenging it would be to just keep a nonprofit afloat and to be able to make, to say, we just want to do some good. Please help us. We ask people to become we call them champions for Nepal. $10 a month. $10 a month. People say, well, that's not very much, and it's not. But if I had 1,000 people who were giving $10 a month, that would be huge. Yeah, it covers all of our expenses, and it still allows us to put $60,000, $70,000 a year right off the bat into the field, making a difference in Nepal. Do you know how hard it is to get people to give $10 a month? It's a challenge. But it doesn't happen unless we find people who are willing to be part of the effort. So this is what I find myself doing a lot of my time too these days. I never thought I'd find myself being a fundraiser, but if that's what we have to do to make a difference, it's what you're trying to do. And at the end of the day, I can look though and I can say, we've touched lives and we're changing lives, and we've built these partnerships with communities who are so proud to see the difference that they're making for their kids and their families. And I'm proud to be part of it. A little bit of it, and I hope that all of our donors, if any of the folks listening to us today, if any of them are the donors who do give us $10 a month, who give us $100 a year, who make a donation at year's end, I hope they're proud. They should be, because they are making a difference that matters. And we're all caught up every day. We're busy. We've got a lot in our lives. Not all of us can take the time to volunteer and to help and to do things. But so you can find other ways to engage in that small contribution. I did have people who've said to me, "Oh, Excellency, thank you so much for what you do for Nepal." I appreciate their kind words, but I don't need the thanks. I need the help. And I've had some say to me, we're immigrants, and it's hard. And I know my grandparents were immigrants to our nation. I know what their struggle was like, and I watched as our family grew in America. And so I say to them, no, you give what you can. They say, I can only give $5 a month. $5 a month, it's still huge if you give it with an open heart and willingness to make a difference. That's in part why we created this monthly giving plan. They said to me, I just can't give you a check for $100. I said, you don't have to give me $100. Can you do $5 a month? I said, yeah. So that's what we do. So we keep on trying. I do think that the work is transformational. It matters. And when I hear from the kids, there's a group of kids in one village who were not going to be able to continue their secondary education, right? Because the school was a 4-hour walk from their village, and they couldn't go 4 hours each way every day, right? and to board in the village where the school was. That cost money. And their parents were only making $1 a day, $2 a day. They couldn't afford it. We were able to fund their education. Yeah, we were able to fund their boarding fees. As an ambassador, I used to do big projects, right? And I'd get a report at the end of the day telling me how many households we reached. Sounded pretty good, but it was just this big report. Now, I know the names of those 8 children. I got a letter from the kids talking about, Ambassador, thank you. We're going to work so hard to be good citizens of Nepal. We're going to work really hard so that our parents are proud of us and so that you're proud of us and to make a difference for the future of our country. I'll take helping those 8 kids and value that every bit as much as that $300,000 project or that $200,000 project that touched a lot of households, but that were anonymous. This becomes personal, and it matters. And I hope we can find some friends who are willing to engage us.
I am sure, hearing the story and the dedication and hard work you put into it, and every individual matters, one step at a time.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's not, and each of our donors, I try to thank each one personally, and especially when we get a new donor, I try to reach out to them personally to say thank you, because they matter. We can't do this. I can't do this alone. Yes. I don't have the money. I'm a former government employee. I'm not a rich guy, but I'm rich in spirit, and I'm richer because of what others have. When I see what others have done, it enriches me, and so we keep on.
That's so nice, and I'm sure we will be able to find help in some way or the other.
We always try.
Yes. It's gotten so emotional. Let's continue the emotional with the devotion and willpower towards helping others. You have engraved another chapter in your life. You've written a book.
Yes.
Power of Dreams and Hope.
The Power of Dreams and Hope.
And I'll let you tell me the title of the book.
The Ambassador's Dog.
Yes.
And in fact, I will just say that right now we have a fundraising challenge out there. People can go to my Facebook page. They can see it. If they create a fundraiser on Facebook and they raise $200, they don't even have to put any money of their own money into it. They can get the money from their friends. Get their friends to donate. And if they donate $200, they'll get an autographed signed copy of the Ambassador's Dog. And not only autographed by the ambassador, but photographed by the dog himself, who is still with me. This is a wonderful bote kukur. And I was on a trek in Upper Mustang, and we were doing cultural preservation work that was part of the ambassador's cultural preservation program that we have in Nepal. And we had left the village of Sarang, and we were on our way ultimately to Lomantang, up on the Tibetan border. But we were going to the Logegar Monastery this day. And we were trekking, and we reached the village of Shokrai, which was right below the monastery. And there, on the side of the trail, blending into the hillside almost, because his fur was the color of the soil of Mustang. Most bote kukers, they're often these black and brown, right? But this dog, he was this blue-gray color. And he blended into the hillside. But I saw him because his eyes, he had these brilliant blue eyes. And he looked at me as I sat there catching my breath because we were hiking up the hill. And the puppy looked at me and he said, "Dai, come here." So of course I did. And I went over and I sat with this puppy. And he jumped on my lap. He licked my hands and he put his paws here. Licked me on the cheek, looked me in the eye with those brilliant blue eyes, and he said, "Dai, you do not know this, but I am your dog." I said, "You may be right." He said, "I am." So we began a conversation. Now people say that dogs don't speak, but they do. You just have to know how to listen. And this dog had a great tail, and I learned that this puppy had been found a few weeks before by a boy in the village, a boy named Karchung. And he had found the puppy alone on the side of the trail, emaciated, and almost dead. And he'd brought this puppy back to the village and fed him a bunch of sampa, and the puppy thrived. And when I met him 5 weeks, three or 4 weeks later, this puppy was strong and ready to engage the world. And in the story, we talk about this puppy who was alone on the side of a trail, but who refused to die, who had a dream, who had a vision, who knew that he was meant for something more. And I like to think, and I do believe this, that the winds that blow down from the high Himalayas, just like a wind horse coming off of a prayer flag, that wind carried this puppy's dreams all the way to the Kathmandu Valley. And those dreams took root in a man's heart, happened to be me. And when I met that puppy, suddenly it all came to life. And this puppy and I were meant to be together. And there's something to be said for the power of serendipity. And in life there are many things that just unexpectedly come into our lives. And the question is, will our hearts and our eyes be open to seeing the opportunity there? If we seize the opportunity, we find that there is beauty, and there is joy, and there is compassion in the world. And that's what this puppy taught me. And this puppy is with me still, and yes, he still talks to me. Okay. And he is a good Nepali dog who now is happily living in Northern Virginia after having traveled the world with us. And he's a great humanitarian as well. I will add that some of the proceeds from this book go to Engage Nepal. And Loki, which is the puppy's name, the dog from Lo, or Ki also, as they told me. So I'll digress and just say, when I had asked them, after they told me in the village the story of this puppy, I said, is this puppy for sale? And they would say to me, Excellency, you must understand. Here in Tibet, the word for dog is Ki, which is also the word for happiness. So we consider dogs to be the source of happiness. So we do not sell them, we give them as gifts. I asked if it would be okay to give a gift in return. I was told it was. My gift was some rupees for this young boy who had found the dog. He was happy. I was happy. The dog was in my arms. And he said, I told you. I said, you were right. He said, I know. But, so his name became Loki, meaning both the dog from Lo, the ancient kingdom of Lo, but also the happiness of Lo. And he's still, for me, he's the happiness of Lo. And that dog, I say, is with me today. And because he was willing to let me share his story in a book, we just recently donated another $1,000 from the sale of the book to Engage Nepal.
Awesome.
So it is awesome. And it comes full circle. And life does this. It opens doors, and if we're only willing to walk through them, if we're open to the serendipitous in our lives, if we're willing to see that there is something more beyond what is immediately apparent, our lives can change. And my life changed when I met that dog.
So Loki was the one who inspired you to write the book?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Though Loki's tail always inspired me. And people would see the dog and they say, oh, look at that dog. Where did this dog come from? So, of course, it led to telling the story, because I'm a storyteller. All diplomats need to be good storytellers. It was my wife who said to me, you need to write this down. You need to write this story. You need this story for our grandchildren. We need this story written. She finally convinced me that I needed to do that, and I did. And we had a dear, dear friend, Jane Vance, who was the artist, who knows Nepal well and who knows Tibet and Tibetan Buddhism and the spiritual dimension of all of this. And it was a wonderful collaboration. And that too was a serendipitous story that I'll save for another time.
Awesome. So this Midwest kid goes into the foreign services, gets an opportunity to go to Nepal, adopts Loki, and then engraves it in a book in black and white. And then that's a nice story.
And if you had told me when I was a young boy growing up in the Midwest that any of this would ever have happened to me, I would have told you were crazy. But again, we don't know where our journey will take us. But being open to the journey That's what it's all
true,
about.
yeah. And then you've been in the government, foreign service, a lot of being a diplomat, handling so many issues, and now winding down to writing a book and continue helping people through Engage Nepal.
Yeah.
Having been in the public service for 4 decades, what else have you planned, or what next?
What next? Staying engaged. That's what it's all about. You can reach a point when you're in government service, and when you, especially, I was very fortunate. I never expected to become an ambassador, and I had the chance to serve my nation 3 times as an ambassador. And it can become very easy to be very invested in being the ambassador in the title. But it's just a title. It's just a role. It is a time in your life where you have an opportunity. And the great thing about it was, with it comes the opportunity to do good, to make a difference, to have an impact. And I was thrilled to have that opportunity. But nothing lasts forever. That's what I used to do. I'm honored to have had that opportunity. But today, there are other avenues to engage. There are other ways to make a difference. And one of the things that I always said was, we all have the opportunity to serve. We all have the chance to make a difference, whether it is within our families, our communities, our schools, whether it's on a global stage, if you get to have a position that allows you to do so, or whether it's as the leader of a small nonprofit, whether it's as a donor. We all have the chance to serve and to make a difference. We just have to choose how we're going to engage the world. I just hope that as I continue my own journey, that it will continue to be marked by the opportunity to engage, that I'll be given the opportunity to engage, and that I'll continue to walk through that door and to take up the opportunity and the challenge.
That's a good one. Yeah. Your Excellency, a big thank you. We are bringing the program to a closure. And is there any going away message for our audience?
I think I've probably spoken plenty. The only thing I would ask your audience, though, is if they can find it in their heart. And I know that many of the folks who will be watching this are people who have that connection to Nepal. Please consider Engage Nepal. We are sincere in what we do. We are making a difference. We are doing good work. But last year was a tough year, right? Yes. The pandemic was huge. We used virtually every penny we had to make a difference. We invested well over $200,000 into Nepal last year. Ate up almost everything we had. So to keep going means we've got to rebuild. And I'm determined we will keep going. We'll do what we can. You can only do what you can, but I can't do it alone. And I hope that maybe a few of the viewers today will say, let's join hands. Let's make a future for Nepal.
I'm absolutely certain you will have someone to reach out to you.
We always hope. I never expect. We
Yes.
always hope, and we keep on going no matter what, Babita.
Yes, that's true. Your Excellency, thank you so much. A big, big thank you.
Thank you.
For your time, and sincerely appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge and your expertise.
Thank you. It was an honor to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To all our viewers, we hope you've enjoyed this exclusive program with the former ambassador to Nepal, Scott Henry Delisi. Break and Links is here to connect with you, so please stay tuned for more. Until next time, this is Babita signing off.